Can a romantic relationship work if both people have a different relationship with social media? That's the question that we're out to answer in today's Hello Haze episode. And could this be one of the most important relationship questions of our times? Definitely not the most important, but I'd argue that it's up there. Social media is one of those terms where I think for each of us, something different comes to mind. There are so many ways to interact with it, yet there's not really any way to escape it. I do think that as it's become more ingrained in our life, one's social media usage and relationship with the app, like it is one of the qualities now that you need to be compatible with in a new partner. Or if you are not immediately compatible, figuring out how to make your two social media personalities and use cases match. So today's letter is about that. And instead of describing it, I'm just going to read it to you now. Hello, Haze. My girlfriend and I have different relationships with our appearances, and social media is a part of that. We're both girls in our early 20s, and this is my first serious relationship. She loves to get dressed up and take photos and videos of herself to post, whereas I don't really post selfies at all. What a silly thing to worry about, right? And yet, I find that I continue to struggle with it. I was raised in a family that was overly critical of selfies and social media culture in a way that felt colored by misogyny, and assumed that a woman taking ownership of her own beautiful body and self and recognizing it as such made her vain or self-absorbed. That line of thinking really bothers me, and yet I still feel a hint of discomfort or judgment about some of my girlfriend's posts. Sometimes I wonder, could this difference in values affect us long-term? Is it bad that she's more into her look than I am? But when I take a step back, I'm not sure it's all that reflective of values at all. I know her and how generous, thoughtful, and welcoming she is, so mismatched values doesn't feel like a fair analysis of my uncomfortable feelings. I believe this has to do with my own feelings about my body and self-criticism, which is perhaps exacerbated by the fact that we've been dating for over a year, but a few of her family members don't know yet, so neither of us can post anything acknowledging that we're together. It feels like my judgment of her photos and videos is connected to my insecurity that she doesn't want to share our relationship, despite my knowing that it isn't about me or us. I just want to be super supportive, encouraging, and excited when she makes these posts, as I feel so lucky and proud to love her, and I want her to feel extremely confident. She should. I've worked hard not to project any of these insecurities on her, but I really want to get to the root of them and not feel uncomfortable about the whole thing in general, for myself and for us. Is this a difference in values, or is it just a me thing? Where do I even begin, Haze? Yours, social media novice. First of all, what a gorgeous human and thinker and sensitive person you are. I selected this letter because, gosh, it's so real, and I really admire the way that you're acknowledging something you're feeling that you're not super proud of, but you're approaching your feelings with curiosity and desire to improve and be a better partner and girlfriend. And I'm just really proud of you, and I'm really curious about you and interested in you. And I think this letter is such a great model of the way that we can all interrogate's not the best word, question some of our thought processes that we all go through. And you've done a really great job of differentiating sometimes with problems we have, there's the surface level problem or the presenting problem, which is a term that I learned from Lori Gottlieb's book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody. It's a great book, nonfiction book about a therapist and her journey seeing a therapist for her presenting problem. And she also tells the stories of different patients, and I wasn't sure I was going to be super into it, but then I really was. Anyway, she introduced me to the term presenting problem, which is you go to therapy or you reach out to someone and there's this surface level problem that you think things are about. Your example, my girlfriend posts pictures of herself on social media and I don't. But then there's a deeper problem. And they're often connected, the surface level problem, the presenting problem, and the deeper problem. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the solutions are the same. Sometimes we have to address and find solutions to the presenting problem before we can get to the deeper problem. But that work of separating the two can be really hard. That can take people years. It's taken me years before. You can be so mired in getting caught up in the surface level thing, which again, that can be a very real, and surface level problems can become quite serious. But you've done this, like you've already sort of done that. You've separated the problem into two. You recognize the surface level, and you're ready to dig into the deep. You've already started doing that and have some ideas of where these feelings are coming from. So kudos to you and whatever work you've done in your life to be so reflective. I want to talk to you about both problems and solutions for both. And I think that the solutions actually in this case will tie together. But before we talk about those ideas for moving forward and how to address this challenge with your girlfriend, I want to first just talk about like what you're feeling and comfort you and unpack some of the golden nuggets that you shared. So first, I think it's really normal. So much of what you're saying is normal. Let me just say that. This letter is not, there are no alarms going off in my brain reading your letter about your relationship and mismatched values. I don't think you're doomed. So much of what you're describing, I was like nodding my head in recognition, because it's really common in your early 20s or in your early relationships to kind of suddenly be kind of alarmed by how different you and the person you're seeing, or even you and a friend, can be about some topic. It's alarming. I think in our, late teens, college, sometimes these like differences in personality or different opinions and things, they just like don't come through as intensely as when you're an adult. So I think it's normal that now, you're probably out of school, I think, or maybe you said early 20s. I don't know why I'm assuming that you're out of college. I'm kind of assuming that you're like 23, 24, but who knows? You're not really a young kid anymore. The thing about your early 20s though is that it's a real experimental growing stage. Like you both are in the middle of some real personal growth right now. And it's hard to remember that or even to recognize it when you're living it. But allow me at 31, 10 or so years older than you, like when I think back to my early 20s, I was really figuring out who I was. And I was dating Rob in my early 20s. We started dating when I was 21. And the thing about dating in your early 20s and then, building a life in a long-term relationship with someone is you're going to be growing individually regardless. And you're either going to grow kind of in parallel and together and find new ways to intertwine, or you won't. I'm not concerned that you're not, but I want you just to sort of picture yourself in your 30s. We don't need to zoom that far into the future if that'll freak you out. Picture yourself in your 30s, and maybe 30 even freaks you out. Look at yourself. I want you to imagine looking at yourself with just like with some sweetness and understanding that you and your girlfriend are growing individually right now and figuring out who each other are. And it will be normal. It's completely normal to be noticing things and to be freaked out by them. However, I also want you to know that it's okay to have different interests. It is totally okay to have different interests. I remember when we were younger, Brian used to be kind of one of the things that made him feel unsure or about our relationship was that some of our interests were so different. And I think we were like 23, 24 when some of those insecurities and fears about the future were coming up naturally, because 23, 24, you do start to feel like, oh my God, is everything in my life set in stone? Is everything that's happening now forever? If I don't feel perfectly satisfied now, like, do I need to throw everything up in flames? But it's okay to have different interests. We're going to get more into how you can become more comfortable with some of these interests, but it's okay to have different interests. Maybe think about what are some things that you like that your girlfriend isn't super passionate about. Flipping it on its head a little bit and thinking about yourself in that way, like flipping the mirror, could help you depersonalize some of this. The other thing I want to tell you is that it's okay that you're having a complicated reaction to this. It's okay that her social media use is bringing up something for you. It's okay to have imperfect feelings. This is not the last time. This might be the first time for you, since I know you mentioned it's your first relationship. This is not the last time that your partner or your girlfriend is going to be super stoked or like enthusiastic about something or want to go in one direction where you are not completely on board, because you are two individual people and we can never really predict what someone's going to become passionate or excited about in life. This is not the first time, this is not the last time this will happen. So think about this as just, you're just getting an at bat. You're just beginning to learn now, okay, what do we do when we disagree? Or what do we do when we have different levels of comfort about something? The reaction you're having right now and the steps you've taken to process that reaction, writing to me, maybe talking about it with some other folks, you are doing what you need to do to be a respectful, thoughtful, and evolving partner to your girlfriend. That's amazing. This is what it is. This is what it looks like. I can't tell you how many of my conversations, like with my adult friends, are often around stuff like this about their significant others, who they love and who they are committed to, by the way. People who are married, like long-term life partners. This stuff comes up. And this is what we have kind of friends and this is what we have community for, is to figure out, hey, I'm going to use Brian's name, though. I'm going to use Brian's name right now. Like, Brian has been feeling this way or has been really excited about this thing, but it's making me uncomfortable. Can I talk about it with you, external person who's not involved? Because I want to be able to show up for him. That's what you're doing here right now with me. So again, I guess I'm just trying to give you kudos. And for anybody who's listening or watching and something's coming up for you, like, that's what we're all doing here together. We're all just figuring out how to honor ourselves and our feelings while also being the best partners and friends we can to the people in our life. And then the last thing I want to say about your feelings before diving into solutions is that you mentioned the note you mentioned about your family and the way you grew up and how you grew up in a family that, was not approving of social media and borderline misogynistic. Like, it's wild, the moments as we grow up where you realize that, like, stuff from childhood has affected you. And just kind of given your letter, like, I get the sense that you identify as someone who's, like, pretty progressive and like accepting of others and, just evolved. And to have these moments where you're like, oh, I might not be as evolved as I think. Or maybe it's, my feelings have not caught up to how smart I am or how smart I want to be. And that is unfortunately the nature of feelings and, like, childhood experiences and things we're taught. We forget some of the things we're taught and some of the voices we learn how to avoid. We learn how to stop thinking about them. And it's just, I think that's something else that's probably happening for you here. Something you thought wasn't an issue, something you thought, oh, that's my family. My family feels that way. I don't feel that way. You're starting to realize some of the ways that, like, these beliefs are pretty deep-rooted in you, whether you like it or not. And it may be the work of a lifetime to regularly confront them. I think it is. None of our thoughts are perfect. It's about acknowledging our thoughts and deciding what we want to do with each of them and who we want to be in the face of those thoughts. So all of that's to say, like, you're okay. If you're wondering, sometimes I find myself like, when things like this happen, I'll be like, is it going to be okay? And you're doing a little bit of that when you're like, is this going to be a problem in the future? I want you to know you are okay. You are okay right now. You are okay. It is okay. And I have some ideas for how to help you be the person that I think you want to be. It sounds like the kind of person you want to be is somebody who is, accepting and supportive of your girlfriend's social media use and the reasons that she does it. My ideas here are reflective of the fact that it sounds like your girlfriend is, like, it doesn't sound like she's using it in a way that is actually bad for you or for your relationship in an objective way. Subjectively, you might end up deciding, like, this is reflective of a larger issue. I don't want to be with her, fine. But this advice is rooted in, like, her social media use is fine and you want to get on board. Because your letter was so, like, deep and rich with so much to unpack here, some of these ideas are going to address the more kind of surface level issues. Some of them are going to more directly address the deeper stuff, though I think actually that they all do intersect together. the first overarching idea that I think will help you get on board with your girlfriend's social media use and like be the kind of supportive partner that you want to be is to participate. To participate in her work, we'll call it. And there are 2 steps to doing that. And the first is to learn about her vision. Right now, at least in what you've shared with me in the letter, you seem to have a pretty confident grasp on the fact that she likes to take photos of herself and her outfits, photos and videos, and post them. But what's the deeper joy there for her? Have you treated her interest towards social media with the same respect that you might treat someone's interest in reading or their career or whatnot? Have you treated her hobby with that same level of respect? And I use that term respect because I do think a lot of this is about showing respect. It's about taking something that matters to her seriously. There are so many ways to use social media, but I think perhaps one of the most valuable ones to me is that it's a tool for the expression of self, which some people are just compelled or compulsed to do. They must find ways to visually or creatively express themselves. And I think everybody is creative, and I think every living thing wants to express themselves in some way. But certain people are, like myself included, are kind of compulsed to do it through art. And I use the term art very loosely. And social media has given us like a really incredible way to do that. Sure, there are some ways of posting on Instagram that are kind of purely vain or narcissistic or like money hungry. It doesn't sound like that is the way that your girlfriend is using it based on the letter. And maybe you'd have a different issue with that. But it sounds like her social media usage could be connected to that desire to express oneself. And I think it would serve you to learn more about that beyond the observation of, she's more into looks than I am. Is it about that, or is it about something deeper? To use myself as an example, I've kind of been on both ends of the spectrum. I think that there have been times where I have posted pictures of myself or videos of myself as like a tool for validation. I wanted to feel something. I was feeling low, and I thought that posting these pictures would make me feel better. And I think the kind of like the nefarious side of social media is that it can be that dopamine hit and can make you feel better for a moment, but not for long. That's a trap. That's definitely a trap you can get into. I have since been trying to be more intentional about using Instagram as an expression of self. And not when I post things now, I'm trying to post with the intention of like, do I think this is cool? I like taking pictures of myself and like creating a specific kind of mood or to tell a story through a bunch of photographs. Like one of my favorite Instagrams recently was of a date night. I was home, he ran to the beach, it was raining. I was going to meet him there, and then we went to stop at a little wine shop and then went somewhere else for dinner. And I kind of took these photos along the way. Some of me at home getting ready in like my cool outfit shots, and I had a lot of fun picking out like an interesting denim on denim outfit. And then I took I curated the carousel in a way that to me felt like a photo essay. And I just thought it was an interesting expression of my night. It felt creative and interesting to me. And I really enjoyed posting it. If you were to ask me why I post on Instagram, that would be my explanation to you. I also think there's something really valid about taking pictures of yourself as a tool to combat the insecurities that you feel in your body. I have plenty of body insecurities. Oftentimes, I hate the way pictures of myself look, but I'll tell you that learning how to take pictures of myself with my Lens Buddy, great app, great self-timer app, learning how to do that and feeling more in control of my image and like learning the different ways that I like the way I look, that has made me feel a lot more confident. It's helped me reclaim some confidence in some way. I'd be curious to know what your girlfriend's relation, like, I'd be curious to hear what her version of this is, because we all have a version of that. Even those of us who don't think you do, I think there is a fun and empowering way into Instagram or TikTok or any of the apps that you're referencing she might be using. Ask her. Prompt that conversation. And I think those questions could be, here, I have a list of questions for you. One could be, and obviously, like, use your own tone of voice. Use your own tone of voice. But what are tell me about the fun parts. What are the fun parts of posting for you? Why can't I get that question out? I literally wrote it down and I'm like trying to make it sound different. What are the fun parts of posting for you? How do you decide which photos to use? Where do you get your inspiration from? Are there any hard parts of posting pictures of yourself? Do you pay attention to likes and stuff, or how do you deal with the attention? Is there any way that I can help? And I was talking with Brian about this before. After I made my outline, I wanted to get his opinion. And one additional thought he had about this is, when you ask her what she likes about posting, don't challenge it. Don't fall into the trap of like questioning her in a way that could undermine her reason. Just celebrate it. Just thank her for sharing with you. I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that was a really interesting thing that he said, because it doesn't really matter if you don't get it. The point of it is not for her to tell you why and for you to immediately understand and click. It's for you to listen, and you don't need to question it further. I loved that tip from Brian, and I'm going to come back to this in the end because I have more to say about why I asked him that, why it was relevant for him to share his perspective with me. So tip number one about participating is learn about her vision. The next piece of that is to be hands-on in the creation process. This is one of my favorite tips in general about like dealing with jealousy or envy or any of these kind of, I think that jealousy and envy could be connected somehow to the situation here. But I think that getting hands-on with someone you cares about, thing. God, I'm doing that thing again, right? The words are like not making sense. Someone you cares about, that doesn't make sense, Hayes. Getting hands-on with someone. When you love someone and they have a thing that you might have some complicated feelings towards, but you really want to be on board, getting hands-on and really involving yourself in whatever way is appropriate and whatever way they're willing to involve you is so, so helpful. Because then you feel a part of it. You right now feel like, I get the sense that you feel like you're on the outside. You're on the outside of her posting. And I think that involving yourself and feeling more like a part of it will help you. And that could mean that you could offer to take some of the pictures for her. When Brian offers to take a photo of me, it makes me feel loved. He doesn't love posing for pictures, and he doesn't even love taking photos of me in the way that I like to, which is part of why I got the Lens Buddy and started teaching myself how to take photos, to avoid having arguments, because I'd get like really pissed off at him if he would take bad photos of me. How many times do I have to teach the man that when I ask you to take photos of me, I'm not saying take 3, I'm saying take 30. Anyway, when we're out and he looks at me and he like can see a vision, or he can sort of, maybe it's just that he thinks I would like the photo and he says, let me take a photo of you. Even if I'm like, I'm never going to use this photo, it makes me feel loved because he's acknowledging that I like photos. I like taking photos. So could you offer to take some sometimes? If you see a good photo op, could you suggest it? Could you even ask her to teach you how she's developed her eye, how she discerns what a good photo moment is? Even if it's like feigning interest sometimes, this is how we show respect to our partners for the things they are interested in. Like, Brian is super, super interested in space. I previously could not have cared less. And I think probably in earlier years of our relationship, when I was like younger and less mature, I probably wasn't as participatory in his interest as I am now. now we have like science lessons sometimes at night, and we'll like lay in bed at night and I'll ask him to teach me about something, and he'll be like, tell me, like, what do you want to learn about? And I'll say black holes. We've probably done the black holes one a million times. And it's not really about whether I am actually genuinely dying to learn more about black holes. It makes me happy to see him talk to me about something that brings him joy. And I wonder if within kind of a comfortable level of pushing your comfort zone, if trying to ask her to teach you or show you about how to take photos and show you the tricks, like if that could actually make both of you feel more connected. It's just harder to be judgmental about something when you've been involved in the process of creating it, when you feel represented and included in the journey, which I think, as you mentioned, is part of the deeper problem here, which leads me to my next overarching idea, and that's, I think it would be wise for you to establish an open and ongoing conversation about your relationship and how you're sharing it with others. What I'm hearing from you is that it's growing harder to not be represented as her girlfriend in public and in private. And I think social media is sort of making the fact that you are not out as a couple to some of her family members. I think that that's making it's kind of yelling at you in the face. Whereas maybe before you could kind of push it to the side and you could say whatever things are real that you probably have said to yourself about why that's necessary or why that's worth it for now. I think I imagine the social media stuff is making it all feel more obvious and glaring and maybe uncomfortable in a way. And I'd be curious to hear from anybody who's experienced this, who kept a relationship private from family or friends or from the world because of for any reasons, including fear of harassment or hatred. How have you navigated that in your relationship? What would you tell your younger self about how to get through that? I'd love for you to share that in the YouTube comments. I can't quite tell from your letter what stage you both are at in your readiness to share this, or what the reality is, or what the specific reasons are for why you haven't shared with those family members. So I can't tell you what to do there, and ultimately that's going to be a decision that the two of you make together. And from different letters that I've read from people, I've seen that some relationships have ended because one partner didn't or wasn't going to come out to their family and the other wanted to be open. You can only know where you two are going to land if you continue to talk about it. And I imagine that this is going to be, if it hasn't already been, an open conversation. I think the social media posts could be a way in to start that conversation again. It could sound something like, I love everything you do on social media, and I have felt myself yearning to be represented in your curation of your life. It's felt really hard recently. Have you felt any of that? Or what do you think about that? I think that that's a completely fair and honest and vulnerable and not boundary crossing way of addressing your feelings. Notice how you're not shaming her at all for what she posts. I understand in your brain you might be having some thoughts that are kind of shamey or judgmental, but in the communication, you're sharing the deeper thing. And I could be off base here. I don't think I am. But the deeper thing is that it feels strange to look at her life online and to know that you two are spending all this time together, you're in love, and then to not be represented at all is starting to hurt you. It's starting to hurt you. That's fair to share and to start to come up with solutions together that make sense given whatever your circumstances are right now. In your letter, you talk about what you know intellectually and what you feel. So you say you understand that the reason she hasn't told some family members is not about you or the two of you. It's about something else. You know that intellectually, and yet your feelings have not caught up to your brain. That is something that you have to be able to talk about with your partner. When you start that conversation, I want you to be patient and go into it understanding that you might not have an answer right away. That's why I said open and ongoing. You want to start an open and ongoing conversation. That's why I used those words, because you sort of want to just like open the road for this to be fair game to discuss and to stay in touch with each other about how you're each feeling about this. because you might not have an answer right away. The answer might not be right away. Okay, we'll tell them, and I'll start posting you on my Instagram. Be patient and be proud of yourself for just getting the conversation going. Another overarching idea to consider here is like, this is less of a thing to do and more of a thing to think about. It's like the differences between having boundaries around social media and like trying to control your partner in their social media use, which I think you've already done a really incredible job of. I think you're doing a really great job of differentiating between the two and making sure, taking steps to make sure that you are not being the controlling partner. And social media is very tricky. It's really tricky because something that happens when you're in a relationship is like you are two individual people, but eventually, and this happens eventually you become kind of perceived as one. And even if you are two individuals, like people do view a couple kind of as one. So the best way that I can talk about this is through my personal experience. So I have a partner, and this is why I asked Brian for some of his thoughts around this. Brian, my husband, is very private. He does not have or use social media. He doesn't post on social media, and he also really doesn't consume social media. He does have a TikTok, like he does have platforms now. He has TikTok and YouTube. He watches YouTube videos. Like he'll watch video podcasts on YouTube, and he has TikTok simply to like and save my videos. But he's not online. And even before I started making Hello Haze, I am one of those people who's compelled to share about themselves. So I was always kind of making stuff and expressing myself through social media when it became available to me. Not in the same way that I am now, but I've always been doing this. Now, as I've started to share more, which I don't think is unique to being a creator or a public-ish figure. Like some people are very vulnerable on their social media. So I'm kind of, when I talk about this now, I'm talking about all of us who identify as people who share on social media in some way. We've had to have many ongoing conversations about what our boundaries in our relationship are around social media use. So like, while I might talk about something that happens to me at work, I wouldn't talk about something that happened to Brian at work and what I learned from that without his explicit permission. That's like a boundary. So I'm not going to talk about his individual life, which of course is my life, but like I'm not going to talk about something where he's the main character. He can be a supporting character in my stories about my life. When I first started making content or sharing more content and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to make, I was doing some more I was kind of just capturing tons of stuff, which wasn't super sustainable or fun for me, but I was kind of like filming everything in the same way that, lots of people like take tons of pictures during dinner. I was doing a lot of that, and I would notice that he was like getting frustrated about it. And I realized that we hadn't really had a conversation of like how I was going to be capturing content during our personal time together. So then we had a conversation about that, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to randomly do that unless I've kind of expressed that, oh, we're going on a walk right now, but I'm using this walk as like vlog footage time. Like we'd sort of agree on that in advance, even if it was a minute or two in advance, so that I wasn't just like springing content creation time on him, because it was his personal time too, if that makes sense. And that in a relationship where a person isn't kind of making content all of the time, it could mean talking to each other about how you're consuming social media when you're together. Like maybe past 8 o'clock, you don't want to be sitting on the couch together zombie scrolling. Like I've had plenty of conversations. Brian and I have our own versions of this, but since he doesn't have social media, it's a little bit less of a problem. But I've had conversations with friends where they're like, yeah, we'll be sitting on the couch at 8 to like watch a movie, and like all of a sudden it's 8:40 and we like haven't said a word, and we both accidentally just got like sucked into the For You page. Maybe you have a conversation about setting a boundary together around that so that you have more quality time together. It's hard to find the line between boundaries and controlling. Where's my notes? Hold on. Brian said something that I thought was really kind of interesting. because the question I asked him when I went over there was like, how have you become more comfortable with me? How have you become more comfortable with me being a person that shares so much of herself online? And he said, you're your own person still. And I'm like, what makes you want me to be my own person? Which sounds like such a basic question, but I think that when you're in a relationship, sometimes you like kind of don't want that person to be their own person, or some people go through that. You want them to be your person, but you don't want them to be an individual person with individual experiences. And Brian said, I don't have control over you, nor do I want to have control over you. And it's better for both of us to allow you to be your own person. And I think that that's really true. I can't imagine that feels easy all of the time, but the reality is like, I am a writer and I use my personal experience to talk about everything. Like my personal experience is my gateway to all of this. I make sense of my life by talking about it and by writing about it, you know? And Brian knew that when he started dating me. In the same way that maybe you sort of know something about your girlfriend, that she likes to express herself in this way. He knew that. He read some of my, creative writing essays in college. And did he know what this was, that it was going to become this? He probably couldn't have predicted it. If he was like, I'm not comfortable with you talking about your life in this way, stop. That would be really hard for us to overcome, considering this is who I am. Now, there are ways that I will think about him and other people in my life when I make decisions. It's wise to think about the other people in your life and make some decisions based on that, not all of them. If you're in a relationship where one person wants to use social media and the other doesn't, I think this conversation about boundaries versus control is an interesting one to have. It's tough to have it if there's a lot of animosity around the topic, but if there's not, I think it's an interesting one to have together and to establish what are some boundaries that feel good in our relationship around this topic, and what doesn't. And if your girlfriend expresses something where she's like, it feels like you're being a bit controlling right now, be open to what she means. Be open to what she means. I really do think that this is a very interesting topic. I think this is an interesting topic. I get a lot of submissions around social media. I chose this one because I like just the emotional intelligence in, what was your name again? The emotional intelligence in your letter, Social Media Novice, was just like off the charts and got me thinking about a lot of really interesting things. I love selecting letters that kind of touch on lots of different points and experiences. But I get a lot of letters about this around posting on social media. There were a couple other shorter ones that maybe I'll do in some like short videos to connect with the episode. But I'm really curious to hear what you all think about this. It's definitely top of mind for me often, and I imagine it's top of mind for you because we all use social media. Like, we all use social media. With new parents, I imagine you might have differing opinions sometimes about whether you want to post your kid. It can come up with like sharing personal news on Instagram and telling some people directly, like, who do you text your personal news and who do you allow to find out on Instagram? There's so much to unpack here. So maybe we'll do a part 2. And if there are any more questions on this topic, please send your letters to me at hellohayesbusiness@gmail.com. You can send me any of your letters. And I think that's all I have for today. This was so fun talking with you. And I'm going to get ready to now go meet Brian at the beach. I hope he is safe. I hope he gets there safely. That's always a worry of mine. But we've established some boundaries for his running. He can be a little crazy when he runs, and both when Brian runs or skis or bikes, the analogy I gave him to be really cautious of his safety, he gets nervous sometimes when I'm on the freeway and when I'm driving because he's a little bit of a worrier. And I said, when you're out doing these, like, biking, skiing, whatever, and you're about to do kind of a risky thing, you want to like run across the street fast, or you want to go off this mogul, I want you to think about me just like bobbing and weaving through traffic for like 12 hours. That would make you pretty nervous, right? Well, think about me in that moment, and what would you like it if I was just bobbing and weaving and dashing in and out of cars? No, you wouldn't. So you better be extra safe and not take any risks. And he said that was a really helpful analogy. So I love you guys and I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week. Is there anything else I want to tell you? You can read my writing at hellohayes.substack.com, and send me your letters, hellohayes@gmail.com. That's a lot of .coms. That's a lot of directions. I appreciate you all so much for being here. Let me know in the comments on YouTube what you think, and I will see you next week. Mwah.